Movies about the movies. They tend to underperform at the box office, but a piece of filmmaking that celebrates the art of cinema is one of my favorite unofficial movie genres. Hail Caesar is my favorite late era Coen Brothers movie, and The Fabelmans might just be my favorite Spielberg movie. But for some reason, movies about movies tend not to blow up the box office. The Fabelmans grossed $45 million on a $40 million budget, which is $160 million less than the Spielberg movie that followed it, despite being 160 million times better. I don't know if these movies come across as too self-congratulatory and pretentious for the masses, but to me, there's nothing more sincere than a filmmaker who wears their love for filmmaking as a medium on their sleeve. But if there was any franchise that I least expected to devote an entire installment to a celebration of the movies, it's the kid-targeted Illumination-created Minions franchise. Yet, if any franchise can afford to take such a risk, it's a billion-dollar franchise like the Minions. The audience for these movies seems guaranteed at this point, so why not take a risk and create a Minions movie for the arts, not the charts? That's what Minions and Monsters is. A movie that tracks the Minions as they search for the most evil leaders they can serve, and in their process, discover a love of cinema as an art form. As per usual, there seems to be a huge disconnect between me and general audiences, because Minions and Monsters is proving to be the biggest franchise underperformer since the franchise began with Despicable Me in 2010. But even the most interesting Minions film falls victim to typical generic franchise fanfare, resulting in a movie that starts the race with a compelling vision but lacks the conviction to carry it to the finish line. Throughout the first act of the film, we follow the Minions as they hop from master to master, ultimately finding their place within the silent era of Hollywood, and ultimately transitioning into talkies. And it's those moments where Minions and Monsters most sings. You don't go into a Minions movie expecting a sincere homage to Citizen Kane, but director Pierre Coffin creates a film that wears its love for cinema lightly on its sleeves. The comedic, family-friendly nature of the franchise allows Minions and Monsters to indulge in the same self-referential celebration of cinema that movies such as The Fabelmans does, but cushioning it in a light-hearted tone that undercuts any accusations of pretentiousness or insider baseball. It's a movie that meets the audience wherever they are. If you're a cinephile, you'll enjoy the references to specific films or film genres that dominated when movies were still in their infancy. And if you just love these yellow little fools, the movie ensures that the foray into the world of cinema is always grounded in the eyes of the characters, allowing you to sit back and enjoy this film as yet another Minions adventure. If you love these characters, you'll get a kick out of seeing them again. But if you're like me and you're not married to the Minions, the movie shines through its introduction of new characters, specifically the robot Dort, played by Jesse Eisenberg, whose romantic adventures lead to the film's funniest moments. But while Minions and Monsters is the biggest swing for this franchise, it's one that ultimately doesn't commit to the big risks it takes, resulting in a movie that is almost great, but not quite there. If you've watched Marvel's TV show WandaVision, this movie reminded me a lot of that, and if you haven't seen it, let me explain why. The idea behind the 9-episode WandaVision is one of the most creative ideas in the Marvel franchise. Instead of being a typical blockbuster franchise, WandaVision is a show that asks the interesting question of what if a Marvel show was a sitcom? And for the first 7 or 8 episodes, it delivers exactly that. A true sitcom set within the Marvel universe. One that focuses on laughter and situational drama instead of big budget action sequences. Then, in the very final episode, the TV show throws this entire premise out of the window and devolves into the same generic, noisy, action-packed Marvel movie we've seen a dozen times before. In doing so, it fails to deliver on its unique premise. Something very similar happens with Minions and Monsters. It's a movie that works at its best when delivering on what it promised. A unique Minions film that celebrates the art form of cinema. And it's at its weakest when it feels obligated to succumb to a generic action-packed third act. The first half of the movie is a loving nod to cinema as an art form, and the second half is a bland action comedy that abandons everything that made this specific entry unique. The first half features visually interesting homages to original cinema, while the second half betrays this by unleashing a slew of generic world-ending visuals which might be used to train Sora. Creative freedom is ones and zeros. You either have it or you don't have it. And while the first half of this movie will give you the impression that director Pierre Coffin had it, the second half proves that creative freedom was an illusion all along. So while Minions and Monsters is still a fun time at the theaters, it's one that falls short of its full potential and is all the more frustrating for it. And for that, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for weekly TV and movie reviews. And if you've had the chance to watch Minions and Monsters, hop in the comments and let us know what you thought about it. I'm Cinemike, and I'll see you next time.